Welcome to Black Map Reviews. I'm your host, Black Ice. This is a new series where I aim to review maps. I will focus on an area of Garry's Mod that I am familiar with, Trainbuild. There are many maps from the decades I've been playing the game, and I'd like to go through some of them with you, sharing their features, aesthetic, quality, pros and cons, as well as anything else I feel is relevant. Not everything is going to be covered because sometimes it may not be relevant, so we'll just see how it goes. If you think I've missed anything or have a specific map you'd like me to look at, feel free to leave a comment below. I can always look into it, follow up or take on a suggestion on interesting maps we may have missed. Welcome to Botmap version 1. This was released around 2009 by the Xuras community. Around that time, the first purpose-built Trainbuild maps really started to become popular. There had been a few before this, but they were quite rare. At the time, there was no standard for the creation of a Trainbuild map other than keeping the inside space between the tracks at 80 units wide. This was PHX, also known as Phoenix gauge. This was, and technically remains, the official standard gauge of Garry's Mod if you take into consideration that the original Phoenix Storms model pack, which contains some of these track models using those measurements, has officially been integrated into Gmod 11 since 2011. The Trainbuild community currently agrees on majority that the model pack track pack 3 by Magnum, which uses real world measurements of standard gauge, is the new standard gauge. Many maps are still made with the Phoenix gauge, but most experienced Trainbuild mappers prefer to use the new add-ons for their quality and variety available. The map features an overground and an underground. We'll first focus on the playground above. The spawn room is where you will begin, containing 8 teleporters, 2 maps and a rotating info board for players unfamiliar with the map. From here, you can easily guide yourself across the map by the clear naming and locations of each room that you may come across, though one is left out. Let's cover the features. Starting with the water section, the map features a small water area with its own docking or submarine bays, with some attention to detail such as the lights under the water and some drainage grate decals. Featured here and around the map are also these rotating advertisement and info boards. There is also an access ramp and the water depth is quite deep. Despite this, there are no underwater features. This would be great for testing out small to medium sized boats or small to medium sized submarines. There are a few crossings in the map, but this is one that leads to the water area. This would be great for testing vehicles that have boat carrying trailers, for example. An interesting and unregular shaped racetrack is also present in the map. It features many curves and turns, wide and thin corridors, an observation platform with doors that can be used to access the area, and a map to show you where you are relative to the rest of the map. There is an info board and a teleporter for the spawn room as well. A re-railer is present which helps to align trains to the tracks for those that might be struggling. Botmap contains a handful of switches. As there was no standard way of making them, the typical solution was to make 2 brushes that were doors. One was closed, one was open, and when toggled they would switch. The effect is that one rail would sink and the other would rise. This was a very commonly used solution for decades. There is a small hilly area. Though not very smooth, they can be used for a variety of activities, such as flipping over. Similarly, a ramp. Very simple, though you can easily fall in if you don't have enough speed, and there is no way out unless you use your fizz gun. Above ground, there are a couple of stations, similarly underground as well. They are quite huge, but back in the day, there was no standards for these things. There are a few solutions, but it may depend on the design intention of your map. I typically use 64 unit tall platforms that touch the floor, but mappers vary depending on the aesthetics or inspiration. Botmap contains 2 turntables. They are simply activated by pressing E, as they are one giant entity. On both sides of the turntable, a buffer or barrier will come up. Unlike more up-to-date methods for keeping trains in one place, the source engine would often apply momentum to the physics of the trains, slightly pushing them forward or backward, which meant they could fall off the turntable, hence the barriers to subtly and simply prevent this issue. In the distance you may have spotted a tower. This tower is very simple but thoughtfully designed. There are no elevators but ramps that go to the top floor, however the roof cannot be accessed. There is attention to detail with the little lights inside and foliage showing age. This is a nice place for height shots, sniping, hide and seek and whatever else the player can think of. Otherwise it doesn't have much use. If you have seen my video on the history, facts, thoughts and feelings of my Gmod Trainbuild maps, you will have heard me mention an activity called Operations a few times. Operations is the Gmod Trainbuild version of realistic scenarios or giving the players something more to do. A map can get very stale if there's no story or action to be had, especially if you can't let your imagination take hold and throw in some roleplay, even if you don't realise it. In Botmap, this factory is a clear early example of operations in Trainbuild. You are able to spawn a container, dispense it in the loader. This would be carried through the loader, which would eventually send it to a waiting train outside. It's not perfect, but I distinctly remember players really enjoying this feature, so much so that I tried to replicate it on the first Trains Roads map, having been inspired by this one. One of the more prominent features in the middle of the map is this arena. It's been used for many things such as NPC fighting, player fort building, robot wars and even just out of the way building spot in some cases. The central platform can be lowered when a prop is placed onto it, which could be used for capture the flag if you were to build a small fort here. It is accessible by 2 doors and has 2 observation rooms and platforms, though I would recommend the rooms if there are bullets and explosions flying around. Now we'll visit the features of the underground. Personally, I think this elevator goes way too fast. If I had to change it, I would make it 75% slower than it is now, which would help some trains not potentially derail by jumping off from the sudden rug pull they experience at this speed. To access the main tunnels, you need to press the arrow at the end of the elevator. I believe this was done to make sure trains on the main line didn't visit the elevator by accident, but I think the switch for this was unnecessarily large. Having a quick run straight ahead from the elevator, we first come across one of the turntables. As this is on the main line, you would have to be careful not to run into this at high speed in case it was being used. It would cause derailments and probably a bit of frustration from other players. In the map are 4 build rooms with a hidden feature we'll cover later. You could lock them from the inside, giving you total privacy. Two platforms that take you to unique areas. This door leads to the tutorial room, which has a very interesting feature. This is one of the general build areas and a pop-up maze room that we'll explore shortly. Another build room, but for trains specific to this map. We then return back to the elevator, which takes you back to the surface. I am quite happy with the choice of texturing and lighting. It's simple and the textures contrast nicely. The light models even have a glow to them, which is a nice bit of detail, and the tunnels are lit properly as well. The first general build area isn't really special. It contains a small observation deck with a spawn teleporter and some space to build. However, the maze is a more interesting part of this section. By pressing the use key on the floor, you are able to build a maze up. Theoretically, you could even put up a wall, fully blocking off this area from view. However, this would have no effect on the performance of this area, as the brushes don't impact visibility on the engine side. Personally, if I was to make one change, it would perhaps be to make that the entities are half the size they are, so that the maze could have more interesting shapes. Doing this could have a negative performance on impact on the map however, and at the time they couldn't be too complex as they were designed for having lots of players. The Trainbuild room is interesting because unlike the other rooms, you can actually spawn a dedicated, purpose-built bogie for your contraptions. This can be particularly handy if the trains you are making are prone to falling over, as sliders tend to have more contact with the rails and allow you to go faster. Of course, they don't look very realistic, so they are optional. The only downside with this is that there is no way to remove them if gone unused. They can be spammed, and trolling players may try to lag out the server if there is no prop protection. This area has a bit more to offer players who like to play with cars and a few ball games. There is an open area below the staircase for building, but beyond the first smaller door is a pair of rail guards and a basketball court in the room beside that. I'm not a basketball expert, so I certainly won't be showing you my skills. The larger door beyond the general open section is home to a race or testing loop track. It features some small bumps and obstacles, but pressing the toggle button, they will sink into the floor to provide a nice empty loop track. This room features some simple geometry, though on a more up-to-date version of the map, I would have tried to make it smoother. Perhaps this is intentional, but it could be useful. This platform takes you to or from the spawn room. As mentioned, there are 4 build rooms in the map. You press the use key on the sign or door and then you are able to lock or unlock it from the inside. There is one subtle feature about this area that many players do not realise until it's too late. By no clipping into the wall or doors, inside or outside of the build room, you are teleported to a red room with an observation room separating you. This red room acts as a sort of jail to keep nosy or unwanted players out of the build rooms. However, you can escape it either by respawning or, as you've seen me do, create a vehicle such as a chair that can no-clip through to the next room. There is a spawn teleporter in the corner if you wish to leave without being trapped again. The last area I want to show you is the tutorial room. To enter contains a few automated doors, and once you are through, you will be greeted to a classroom type environment. There are a few tables that you can play sitting at, a projector and a camera. Around the map are RT screens or render targets. These are a special type of camera that can be placed around the map, so others can see the recording around the map. This is how characters showed up on the combined city screens in Half-Life 2. One final thing that you may have noticed during the video are the arrows and coloured platforms. These were made specifically for YMod, hence bot in the map name. This was to create potentially automated or advanced trains that could be colour coded, for example. Many maps have these things, but go unnoticed. The bot maps were infamous for them. Overall, the first bot map is a fun playground. There is a lot to do, and in 2009 that meant a lot. I remember playing this map for probably way too long, especially when the second and even more so the third version came out. There were fun times back then, during what was probably one of the golden ages of Garry's Mod. This map would be great for single player testing or small servers just having a bit of fun on something different. Thank you for watching the review. If I sound a little off more than usual, it's because I've been fighting a cold during the making of this video, which led to a lot of procrastination. Please comment below if I can improve on anything, if I missed anything, or you have any suggestions on maps you'd like to see me cover.